Hey guys, Manic Mercurian back here again. I just wanted to talk about the astrology for today, February 20th, 2021. Going through the end of February and potentially into the first few days of March, we'll see what all is in the astrology, and I'll just kind of go from there and play it by ear. So here's the chart for today, February 20th. Like I said in the last video, we're approaching February 21st, obviously, which appears to me to be a significant day astrologically. It's not like a super big intense day or anything like that, but it is a sort of a beginning of a chapter in a sense, just because we have, well, I'll just go to the chart for tomorrow. So as you can see here, Mercury by this time tomorrow, this chart's actually for 3 a.m. but yeah, so by even early in the morning tomorrow, Mercury will be turning direct, and again, it's very slow moving, like I discussed in the last video. It's pretty much just stationary for like a whole week surrounding today. But technically, yet by tomorrow, it will technically have come to a standstill and then turn direct. So that's a big shift in the energy, of course. Mercury retrograde is concluding now. Also, though, over here at the same time, you have the moon crossing the north node, and it's in Gemini, which is a Mercury ruled sign. And again, I talked about this a lot in the last video, but you do have that sort of, that's another sort of crossroads energy, or a shift kind of energy. So to be more specific, just the whole rhythm of the day will be different. When Mercury is retrograde, things are kind of more dysfunctional, and we're supposed to kind of turn inward and be maybe less active on the outside, more active on the inside, so more reflective, or more kind of going back over stuff from the past in a way, past relationships, past just themes in general. Maybe if you are starting something, it either kind of won't work out, it'll be dysfunctional, or it'll just take a long time to take off, because it's Mercury retrograde is a time for being very thorough and more for reflecting or integrating the past than for new things, just generally speaking. So that's shifting. So by tomorrow, Mercury will come to a standstill, and whenever planets come to a standstill, or we call it whenever they station, in this case station direct, they're intensified. So Mercurian themes like the mental energy or the communication will become sort of intensified, and it can be kind of dysfunctional. I compare it to a train like stopping and then going in a different direction, because it doesn't just happen right away. It takes a long time to slowly come to a stop and then slowly gain momentum going forward instead of backward. So it can be dysfunctional. If you imagine that, it can not only take a while, it could take like several days, or maybe more than a week for that transition to take place, but also it can just be dysfunctional in general. So in Mercury retrograde, we have general dysfunction because things, there's more technical errors and stuff like that. But then when Mercury stations and turns direct, things do generally flow better when Mercury's direct, but that process of stopping and then gaining momentum going forward, it is a change for us still, and it's something to adjust to. So the mental energy can be kind of overwhelming right now, especially because Mercury's in Aquarius. So there's a lot of like electric or nervous energy, a lot of busyness, and all of that will change tomorrow, basically. We hopefully have learned and integrated from this Mercury retrograde experience, and now by tomorrow, February 21st, we can start to gain traction and start to move forward and complete the issues that we have been dealing with. And this is extra significant. I did touch on how the moon crosses over the north node. So the moon is in a sort of privileged or exalted state, just because by the north node it's a sort of very evolved energy, or like a high awareness or high vibrational energy, if you want to put it that way. So yeah, and then because moon is in a sign ruled by Mercury, that just adds to the fact that the mental energy is shifting. The mental energy is, I think especially because Mercury retrograde has been in a sign where so many planets are, especially outer planets, or relatively outer planets like Jupiter and Saturn. I think this past few weeks we've dealt with a lot of really heavy issues, or they could have been very challenging issues, but we could have also made a lot of breakthroughs in different aspects of our lives. And so it's been maybe heavy, maybe difficult, but hopefully you feel like I do, where, I feel in my personal life and I've seen in the world, where I do think we've gained a lot of traction in certain areas, if that makes sense. And so we should start to feel that the rewards for our labor, I guess, or we should start to actually gain traction and momentum starting tomorrow, where we're finally getting rewards for the things that we worked on over the past few weeks in this Mercury retrograde period. So that's tomorrow. So we should finally get a more normal pace to things, a more normal line of communication, and a little bit less dysfunctional and more normal, more smooth starting tomorrow. So that's a big shift. And then going forward, the sun has just recently entered Pisces at the time I'm making this, so I guess I should mention that. So as of February 18th, which is already passed, the sun is in Pisces, which is the last third of winter. So we are concluding winter, or beginning to conclude winter, and start alluding to spring. So it's a time of transition, of course. Every Pisces season, I guess, is a time of transition, and some people say it makes them more emotional. So look out for those types of themes over the next month or so. And then going forward from today, the moon, of course, enters Cancer, February 22nd, so it's in domicile there. There's so many planets in Aquarius that everything else is sort of in relation to Aquarius. So wherever the moon is, how does it line up with Aquarius? So for example, right now, on the 20th, moon is in Gemini, so it's trining all the Aquarius stuff. So there's a lot of harmonious energy, which is a kind of a big change from what we've been experiencing, where it's been more difficult and edgy. And then as the moon enters Cancer, it's in domicile, but it doesn't have a whole lot to aspect. It does trine the moon. It forms an exact trine with the sun. But that's about it. It doesn't have a whole lot else to connect to, really. So we might feel more emotionally grounded, but maybe it's kind of like an introverted energy, I think. We might be kind of closed off and in our own worlds, especially having just been through this Mercury retrograde experience. I think we've all kind of been maybe compartmentalized, where we've dealt with where we've just dealt with very personal issues to our lives. So I think moon and Cancer kind of makes sense. We're coming out of that. We might be in kind of a relatively good place as a whole. Of course, it's different for everyone, but I think as a whole, I do like it. And I think we will be more centered after Mercury retrograde. That tends to happen, especially with the moon in Cancer and domicile. We might be in a place that's emotionally healthy, but still a little bit compartmentalized or cut off from each other, just because what we've been through has been very personal in nature, if that makes sense. Going forward, February 24th, Venus is preparing to enter Pisces. Also, the moon is preparing to enter Leo. I don't see a whole lot that's like super noteworthy that day. I could always be missing something, but it doesn't really catch my eye at all. Mercury is still at 11 degrees Aquarius. So like I said, don't think of it as like, Mercury's retrograde and then suddenly on February 21st, it's suddenly going direct, because, it's not really like that. Think of it like a train. It takes a while to, yes, there is a date where it technically goes from going backward to going forward, but it's so slow at that time. So just keep that in mind. And again, Mercury is the pace of things, the momentum, the rhythm of things. It's how efficient we are. It's the mental energy, the communication. All of that is almost coming to a standstill on the 21st, and then slowly shifting directions over the next several days. So I kind of said that already, but I just wanted to make that very clear. Again, Mercury's retrograde, so you have to kind of make sure you're very thorough to avoid miscommunications, I guess. Going forward, like I said, February 25th, moon is in Leo. Venus is at the critical degree, at the very last degree of Aquarius, so it's wrapping up those themes. Venus is going to go from a more collective space. Aquarius is very much about the community and the group, it's going to go into Pisces, which is much more subtle and maybe more personal, or more not just subtle, but more like ethereal or non-physical, I guess, in a way, than Aquarius. What else? Let's see. And then I guess I'll talk about that more once Venus actually enters Pisces. Moon in Leo, again, even more so than Cancer, it doesn't really have anything to aspect to. in general, for this entire time period, there are no planets in fire whatsoever. So you've got Chiron in fire, but honestly, to me, Chiron's effects are kind of subtle and not very tangible. It's an asteroid, and it does, and it's so slow moving. It does affect us, but in general, there's such a lack of focus on fire signs that when the moon is in Leo, some of us, depending on our astrology, might feel that fun party energy, but there's nothing to ground it. There's nothing to actualize it, or we might not be able to share that energy with anyone because the moon just doesn't have any other planets to aspect in that energy. So if you want to kind of personify the planets, the moon like wants to party and have a good time in Leo, but none of the other planets are on the same page. They're all in Aquarius or Pisces or Taurus. They're just, they're not feeling the fun, summer type of vibe that Leo has, even though the moon, which is our emotions, might be there. But, again, it's very disconnected. That's for the February 25th and 26th. February 26th, Mercury's still only at 12 degrees Aquarius, so very, very slowly gaining momentum. It's still kind of sandwiched between Jupiter and Saturn this entire time, so again, it's still touching on very heavy themes. And so even if you're not a person to be highly affected by Mercury's transits, you might be for this one, because it's affecting us more as a collective, being in Aquarius and being between Jupiter and Saturn. It's I think Mercury's effects are very universal, which is why I've kind of focused on them so much. So again, that sort of standstill energy, or that intensified communication or mental energy, things are slowly shifting direction. Mercury's slowly gaining momentum. It's finally reached the 12th degree, or I guess the 13th degree of Aquarius on February 26th. Also February 26th, Venus enters Pisces, which I really like because it takes the heat off of Aquarius. So now we've got 3 planets in Aquarius, 3 planets in Pisces, so it's more balanced. Venus is exalted in Pisces, and it's kind of awkward in Aquarius. So moving to Pisces will be a much welcome transition, I think, for everyone. Venus in Pisces can be kind of maybe delusional or just hard to pin down. It can be kind of, non-physical or abstract and sort of hard to connect with on that level. But at the same time, again, it's exalted. Pisces, Venus in Pisces is sort of like universal love, or love of the collective, or it's a very spiritually aligned placement, I guess. And so, and again, just because we're moving from such an intensified cluster of planets in Aquarius, I think that will be a welcome transition. Let me close these because I'm getting distracted. Thank you for the comments, though. Gaston, I appreciate the comments. But anyway, okay, so what else? And that pretty much is what I see for February 26th. Going into the 27th, moon enters Virgo, and this is one of the main points of the video I want to make, because we're going to approach this is actually the exact chart for the full moon in Virgo at 8 degrees, so I'll talk about that. Let me make sure I don't want to miss anything else for February 27th, but that's definitely the main thing. I think that's pretty much it. You do have, again, just to touch on Mercury, now it's not 13 degrees, so, it's taking like a day or two just to move a single degree. But it is gaining momentum and approaching Jupiter, which should be nice in a few days, but not quite yet. But February 27th, you've got full moon, again, at 8 degrees Virgo, with Sun at 8 degrees Pisces. This full moon sort of aspects planets. I mean, the full moon is quincunx Saturn at 8 degrees Aquarius. The quincunx is kind of a minor aspect, though. It is kind of an awkward, difficult energy, but it's also sort of subtle, so you may or may not feel that. And then the full moon is also trining Uranus, which could make it more quirky and weird. This is already a very weird full moon, in my opinion. It's not just for myself, but the effects I've noticed on everyone. It can be very disorienting. The Virgo-Pisces axis in general is very weird, because I think as humans and with our type of society, we're not used to endings. We don't welcome change or endings. Those change and endings are some of the most difficult themes for us humans to experience, I think. And because Virgo and Pisces are so introverted and there's so much about change and endings and transitions, I think it can be some of the hardest and strangest for us to experience and the most difficult for us to relate to. And of course, it depends on your astrology, but just in general, I want to give some advice. So Moon in Pisces, full moon in Virgo with the Sun in Pisces can be, like I said, difficult because of the change and the endings, but also it can be mentally destabilizing, especially with our society. We're always supposed to be productive and having fun and either working or socializing, maybe not so much during these days of COVID and everything, but just in general, we expect to be like on all the time, and that's just not possible with a full moon in Virgo with the Sun in Pisces. Again, it's very introverted, it's very much about change and endings. So, and it might not necessarily represent endings in your life because it just depends on your astrology. Full moon is sort of more of a culmination, but specifically, if you're expecting to be highly productive or highly on and, being out in the world and being, doing a lot of things and being super active, I just don't think it would work very well. It might be very dysfunctional because, again, these are very introverted energies. They're both reflective and, they kind of both go within themselves, I guess. So if you're expecting to be super productive or super on, you might just burn yourself out. You might be have mental or physical health issues, because both Virgo and Pisces have to do with health and mental health, healing others, but also healing yourself, and psychology, and all that can be heightened and strengthened during this transit, but it can also be weakened. It's just a center of focus in general. So what I would really recommend is do something where you can kind of zone out, because these energies are really good for integrating, reflecting. I kind of touched on that a little bit, but also for like intuition in general. So if you do something more passive in nature, or it doesn't necessarily have to be passive, it could be something active, like sports would be good, like even competitive sports to some extent, because something where you can kind of forget yourself and lose your mind. So even competitive sports could do that, or running or jogging could do that. Even walking for a long time, especially in nature, would be really good for kind of just losing yourself, or maybe if you like listen to music while you do it, something where you can have a sort of healthy form of escape. Reading, writing would be good. Any kind of artistic or creative stuff. What else? Everyone has something different. Just something where you don't have to be on all the time and you don't have to be thinking in your logical mind, if that makes sense. Something where you can kind of just zone out. Like meditation would be really good if you're into that. And I always give this advice with transits like this, and I know it might not resonate, but just try it. Do something. Cook something where you can, if you're used to cooking, don't cook like a new recipe where it might be stressful, but just cook something familiar to you where you can kind of just go through the motions without having to think about anything, if that makes sense. Something like that would be really rewarding. Again, even if you're not necessarily a passive type of person, let's say you've got like a bunch of Aries in your chart and you're like, I don't want to read or write or whatever, hit a punching bag or whatever you're into. There's got to be something like tennis, or it could be almost anything. Just something involving kind of taking a break from work and, depending on the nature of your work, but something where you can kind of just let yourself be off and just zone out, if that makes sense. Gardening. Okay, I think I gave enough examples, so hopefully you kind of understand my point. But that would be really, really rewarding on the 27th. Especially, like, just to touch on this again, if you were expecting to, like, go party on that day, like, especially if you're involving, like, drugs into it or alcohol, be moderate, just because Virgo and Pisces can get really crazy. They can also be very peaceful and serene. Go in the peaceful, serene direction. Don't be super active and super crazy, because it will be very mentally destabilizing. So that's pretty much my advice for February 27th, full moon on that date. And then let's just go to the end of the month. So February 28th, moon's still transiting Virgo. It also opposes Neptune, and I think probably part of the reason why I associate full moons in Virgo and Pisces for that matter to be so weird and destabilizing is because Neptune has been in Pisces for, years and years from my perspective. Like, I think pretty much the whole time I've been into astrology, Neptune has been in Pisces. So yeah, again, that's part of the weirdness for it. This full moon isn't conjunct Neptune, but it is happening, in the sign opposite Neptune. And then as you can see here, the moon does make an exact opposition to Neptune. Not in this chart, but it would happen on the same day, February 28th. So again, you have a lot of the same themes as the full moon, which I just described. So again, could be very mentally and even physically destabilizing, but it can also be good for, zoning out, being creative, stuff like that. Pretty much everything I just said. So all those same themes will continue through February 28th, because even as the full moon is winding down, you've got moon opposite Neptune, which is very similar. Okay, so I won't repeat myself, but I really, really highly encourage you to follow my advice. Go bike riding or something. I want to just keep giving you examples, but I won't belabor it. I don't know if I'm using that word correctly, but... And also the moon at this point, on the 28th, it squares the nodes, which can be kind of a subtle energy. I mean, you may or may not relate to this because it's not always noticeable or tangible, but it could be sort of a crossroads. Again, especially if it aspects something in your chart directly, it can be kind of an awkward energy, or you can feel kind of lost, where you have to make a choice, or it's some kind of like halfway point or transition. So that's just something more minor to take note of, I suppose. And then I'm kind of just winging it now because I don't know what happens after that. I haven't looked yet. Whoops. And then, yeah, there's only 28 days in February. And then March 1st, moon enters Libra. Again, you've got all the trining with the Aquarius stuff for the next couple days after that. So should be more harmonious. Also, Mercury at this point is gaining momentum and approaching Jupiter. So you've got a lot more positive vibes, I think. So I guess I'm seeing a theme where we integrate from the Mercury retrograde going forward after the February 21st, but then we're still kind of isolated after that, especially approaching the full moon on the 27th. So even the full week after Mercury goes direct on the 21st, in a way, we're still kind of reflecting. Maybe we're gaining momentum and gaining some normalcy, but at the same time still reflecting in some sense, or we're still kind of detached from one another and still going through some kind of personal stuff or reflection, and that can get kind of weird. It can like play with your mind, but it can also be very rewarding if you integrate and if you follow my advice. but that kind of shifts on March 1st. So March 1st, you've got the moon in Libra, so it's more easy and carefree. And then, like I said, because Mercury is gaining momentum, it's approaching Jupiter, it's pretty much conjunct Jupiter by March 1st, and then also the moon in Libra is beginning to trine Saturn, Mercury, and Jupiter in Aquarius. Things start to flow a lot better. Things start to, especially Mercury gaining momentum, you've got just more, like, you don't have to reflect so much, and it's not so serious. You can kind of be more carefree a little bit, a little looser. Kind of go out and just be more spontaneous, or have fun, or be more productive, or whatever your normal routine is, you can kind of get back to that more so on March 1st. So I really like that. I like the other stuff too before that, where you're kind of integrating. Like I said, you can make the most of it and have it be a good thing, but I think it definitely is a little bit more challenging. But by March 1st, I think it's just generally easy, and you don't necessarily have to follow the advice I said by March 1st. You can kind of just do whatever you want. Air signs in general are so kind of carefree, and it's like the rules are more relaxed in air signs, I think, in general. Yeah, and they're more individualized. So by March 1st, you can kind of just do whatever. Work hard, or continue just integrating, or whatever it is, do you. So I like that. It gets more easygoing. And honestly, I think that's kind of a good place to just wrap it up. That's pretty much what I see going forward, even through March 2nd. And yeah, I'm going to just leave it there. So hopefully that was insightful to you. Follow my advice, I swear. I know it sounds stupid to be like, oh, you should meditate and stuff. And it's like, I feel like we can kind of hear that and be like, okay, whatever. But honestly, try it and just see if I'm right. Let me know if that helps at all. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.